Councillors, the time is now 7 o'clock and I will officially open this evening's agenda briefing forum. This evening is not a decision-making forum. It is a briefing on the agenda for the Ordinary Council meeting, which will be held next Tuesday, the 22nd of February. Please note, 22nd of March. Please note that this meeting is being live streamed. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we are meeting, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. In attendance this evening, we have all councillors present with the exception of Councillor Clark. We have 36 deputations, 32 have been submitted in writing and 4 will be presented in person this evening. Members of the gallery and deputies, welcome to this evening's agenda briefing session. And I'll explain now how the deputation process will work for you who are here for the first time. Each person who is presenting a deputation will be invited to come forward and speak at the microphone. You will be invited to speak for up to 5 minutes. As we get close to 5 minutes, I will let you know so that you can conclude your deputation. After your deputation, the councillors may have some questions for you. If you are speaking on the same item as another deputy, you're welcome to speak up for up to 5 minutes also. However, it would be appreciated if you could add additional information rather than simply repeating what has already been presented. Once the deputations have been completed, we will go through the rest of the agenda and councillors can ask questions on any of the reports on the agenda. This is not a decision-making evening. We will meet next week where the agenda will be put forward and councillors will vote on the items. When there is deputations for and against the officer's recommendation, when the person speaking for is at the microphone, the person against will be asked to leave the room and vice versa when it's their turn. So we'll move on to the deputation list. The first deputation we have is in relation to item 10.3.1. Mrs. Francine and Brian Atkinson are speaking against the officer's recommendation. So if you don't mind coming up, and I'll just ask the other deputy if they could leave the room. Yes.
Can I take this off?
You can take that. Please go ahead.
Madam Mayor and councillors, my name is Francine Atkinson and I'm here in regard to the permanent removal of the tree on our verge at 17 Mercury Place, Morley. Late last year, we were issued with a warning notice by the council not to trim the tree, even though it was planted by the previous owners. Our petition for removal of the tree was presented at the same time as 11 Mercury Place, but was inadvertently overlooked. Unfortunately, social media has since had many disparaging taunts against some councillors and other unfortunate incidents have occurred. We are hopeful this does not prejudice our chances now of obtaining the same positive outcome as number 11. Many websites highlight the importance of matching the right tree to the right place to benefit both the tree and the owner. The tree in question is often called the West Australian Weeping Peppermint. The Perth Water Council Department Waterwise issue a brochure, Select the Right Tree, published in 2020. It recommends the weeping peppermint tree that can grow to a height of 16 plus metres is suitable for planting in public spaces and on large properties. They recommend much smaller trees for verges. We have recently come to learn that some councillors do not have a verge tree, so we hope that you would not expect us to have a tree that Waterwise recommends for large areas on our verge. On ABC Gardening Australia website, they give a special mention to an area under the peppermint tree, saying it is a classic example of where most plantings fail. We have witnessed this fact. The exposed roots of the tree suck all the moisture from the ground. The tree requires copious amounts of water on a small block to keep the dust down, regardless of whatever is planted underneath. not a very water-wise tree on a small frontage and a waste of our most precious resource. We are more than happy to comply with Bayswater Council's water management strategy, which clearly states its aim is to reduce energy and water use and empower the community to do the same. Removing this tree will definitely reduce excessive water use. All peppermint trees will develop widespread lateral roots that grow outwards for quite a distance, protruding well above the ground. Besides the future damage these roots will cause, it is very concerning that it is an easy tree to climb for children, as the trunk splits in two. One trunk leads towards the road, which children could easily fall onto. Clean away already have knocked off a large overhanging branch. Jumping from trees causes terrible injuries when all the roots are exposed, which this tree is noted for. We cannot be responsible for children climbing and jumping out of the tree. My husband has spent many, many hours digging out the exposed roots for safety reasons. Prior to this, we also had the same barren condition underneath the tree as number 11 and would hate to return to this, especially in regard to the children's safety in the cul-de-sac. The tree, as it grows to its natural canopy, as recommended in the arborist report, will cut out the natural light and warmth we now receive in our front living area in winter. Any good the tree does for the environment will well and truly be negated by heating appliances, thereby, contrary to the Council's water management plan, sadly increasing greenhouse gases. Unfortunately, it provides no shade to the house in summer due to the position of the sun. Another very real issue for us is about safety as this tree grows. It will provide cover for easy access without being noticed to our home. As we are growing older, home invasion unfortunately happens. This is very concerning to us.
Mrs. Atkinson, you're just getting up to 5 minutes. So.
Okay. The coordinator of the tree services' only concern was for the tree and the aesthetics it presents from above. He didn't acknowledge the whole host of problems it presents to the household of small frontage. If the tree is not removed, it will lead to thousands of dollars of damage in the future, as it is far too big for our area, and the priceless cost of the personal mental health to the owner. The manager of Parks and Gardeners' letter to neighbours was received on Friday of the long weekend, and the response was due back on the Monday, not really given a fair time to respond. We hope you afford the same fairness to us as number 11, as we have the exact same tree and problems on our property. Therefore, option 3 is our choice. It states, this option would ensure Council remains consistent with their decisions, considering approval was given to the property owners of 11 Mercury Place under similar conditions. Taking one tree and not the other would be hard to validate. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just ask councillors if they have any questions for you. Sorry, if you could just stay there. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming in to explain that a little bit and help us understand. Can I ask you to go back a little bit and tell me a little bit more about the tree? So you said it was planted, so it wasn't planted. So can you tell me how long you've owned the property?
How long you owned the property? About 20 years.
And you've lived there that whole time?
We've been at the property the whole time, yes.
Yeah. And the tree was there already when you moved in?
Yes.
So what's changed?
What's changed is that the tree was smaller when we moved in, and my husband has maintained it. He has, until we had a warning like last year that we weren't to touch it, and we had to he dug out the roots because of the danger to children in the street, and also it was very barren and just loads and loads of water at the bottom of the tree to try. Now it looks okay, the grass, because it's had so much water on it and the roots have been dug away.
Okay. So I'm trying to understand from the officer's report. So it kind of alludes to the fact that you were pruning it before, but now you've been told you can't prune it. And is that the problem?
Yeah, well, that is the problem. Well, Brian's been trimming it himself here for a number of years, but it's not suitable to the council's canopy.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I've seen the tree. It looks like nicely maintained. So what made you decide to ask for the tree to be removed instead of being allowed to keep pruning it, for example?
Well, we're not allowed to prune it for a start, and also Brian's pruned it, but we're not getting any younger, and that tree's hard to prune, and it's prune, and it's very expensive to have it pruned. And if they prune it the way they've pruned it down at number 17, it's just huge for that front area. It's huge.
So if you were able to keep pruning it yourself, would you be more inclined to allow the tree to remain in place?
No, because my husband, like I said, he can't be climbing trees anymore.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Sazowski.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mrs Atkinson.
Sorry.
Hi, Mrs. Atkinson.
Hello.
How did you feel when you were issued a warning for having pruned the tree? What did it make you feel?
Well, depressed probably, because it's very anxious, because you see the tree down the road, which is very barren underneath and ugly underneath. If it was on a bigger area, it wouldn't be, but on those small areas, it's so dry, and if you leave it, you just end up with all exposed roots that will cause damage eventually. And also, you look at their place and it just covers the front windows. It has been trimmed, but when it's not trimmed, it covers all the front windows, which is very dark and dismal in that house.
So you mentioned that your husband has been pruning the trees. How long has he been pruning the trees for? Sorry, Councillor Johnson, if I missed this. How long had he been pruning the tree for and
forever,
looking after the
yeah.
tree? For a long time.
Do
you feel as though pruning that tree has encouraged its vitality and it's a beautiful tree? Do you think pruning
It is a beautiful tree. It's much better than the trees along Telstar Drive that all look half dead, and it does look very healthy because it's been pruned that way, and watered, and untold water goes into that tree.
So you put a lot of effort into looking after that tree, and
Yes.
so to be issued a fine...
We weren't issued a fine.
to be issued the warning.
Well, warning,
It
yeah.
made you feel...
Well, that's a bit rough when you see how we kept it, really.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions, councillors? Councillor Peterson-Peark.
Yes, thank you for coming tonight and present your concerns with regards to this tree. I have a general question. Do you think that council should remove any veg tree where the property owners who live adjacent to that veg tree want to remove a veg tree?
Well, in this case, this tree, like the Waterwise, it is not Waterwise. We're a Waterwise council, and this tree takes up, it's a precious resource, water. So I think if you've planted, we have to suffer because those people planted the wrong tree, that it's just too big. It's too big. It's sad, but it's too big.
So any property owner who argues that the tree on the veg is too big, should we approve the removal?
Well, that's not up to me. Mine is on the lawn, that maybe some trees have different verges, but ours is very prominent verge, and, you know, some verges, the trees are out further. I don't know, but this tree, definitely, this type of tree is not suited to small areas, and it's ugly. Everyone who comes down our street, not our tree, but the other tree, comments, those poor people.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? I have a question. Thank you for your deputation. And I have heard that you have lived in the property for 20 years and the tree has been there for that amount of time, and you have gone to great lengths to maintain it and keep your property looking neat and tidy. And I do understand that you have said that your husband is ageing and he's now no longer in a position physically to be able to continue maintaining it to the standard that would be suitable. If the city was the body responsible for pruning of the tree, would that be more suitable for you?
Well, after speaking to the arbitress, all they want to do is prune it the way they've pruned the one at number 11, and really we're going to end up with trouble if they do it that way.
Totally understand. If they were to prune it to the same standard that for 20 years you have been maintaining it, would that be suitable?
That sounds good, but then there's a change of guard at the council, and then you're not allowed to touch the tree again.
So that's really where your concern is coming from about the removal. That's why you're going for the removal. A lack of trust in the decision making.
Well, it will happen that there'll be different councillors elected, and then the chances are they'll say, don't touch the tree again.
Okay.
They were very adamant about we shouldn't touch the tree.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So we'll just ask if you could leave the room when the next deputy comes in.
Where do you want to go?
Welcome, everyone. I'll ask for the next deputy to come forward. It's in relation to item 10.3.1, Mr. Brendan James.
Thank you. My name's Brendan McGrath, not Brendan James, so I don't know how that's...
Okay, I'm sorry.
Like
That's
that,
what
but
I've
that's
got
okay.
in front of me.
Just to clarify.
Thanks for that clarification.
No worries. Thanks for the opportunity to make some comments tonight in relation to this issue. Before I start, I just want to thank Councillor Ostrzowski and Maleka for hearing me whinge during the week about the last month's decision, so I really appreciate that. Look, I thought it was important to come down this evening, speak in favour of the officer's recommendation on this item, given that last month I think council made a really terrible decision. In the debate last month, we heard some councillors say that in coming to their decision, they didn't hear from anyone from the other side, which I think is a very flawed argument, and in any case, that's just why I'm here, to prove that there is another side. I think what was lacking in the commentary from those who voted to remove the tree last month were some facts and broader context. So I'd like to touch on some of those issues. First thing I'd like to talk about is the weather. 6 days after council made its decision last month, Perth recorded its hottest summer on record. Most of WA had a hotter than average summer, and Perth had its hottest ever. The average maximum was 33.3 degrees, a full degree hotter than the previous record. We had 13 days above 40, 6 of which were consecutive. Both of those stats also records, as was the number of days we had over 35 degrees. I don't know about you, but at times I felt captive in my own house. It was difficult to exercise, socialise and sleep. It took a toll on my family and I. So what's abundantly clear to me, and I hope to you, is that we're living through the impact of climate change. The second point I'd like to talk about is just data around tree canopy. Councillors, you would have seen in this agenda paper that Central Ward has the lowest canopy of all the wards. Highest is South at 20.5%, West Ward 15%, North 13.2%, and Central 11.8%. At the whole of city level, it's around 14%. And what we know about that is beneath or under or lower than Stirling, Vincent and Bassendean. So we're clearly underperforming. The last fact or context I'd like to talk about is the benefits that trees bring. They bring economic, social, environmental and health benefits. So if you accept that trees provide benefit and you accept that the canopy is low in the city of Bayswater and lower still in Central Ward, and you know that trees can help mitigate the impact of climate change, I cannot understand how you can draw the conclusion that the pros of retaining the trees don't outweigh the cons by a mile. Councillors, you all put your hands up to become community leaders. You all spent considerable time convincing us as voters that you would improve the community. In fact, 3 of the 6 councillors who voted to remove the trees last month also told us they would protect green spaces at the last election. In my opinion, good leadership at local government level means that you make decisions that are in the long-term interest for the whole community. Effective leadership is not succumbing to pressure on an issue that you know or feel deep down is wrong because it will make you unpopular. Everyone in this room would be aware that part of Riverside Gardens used to be used as a rubbish tip, effectively dumping rubbish straight into the river. And I'm sure that everyone here is quite rightly horrified by that. We look back on those decisions and think, how on earth could they do that? I believe that unless we change our behaviour and decision-making, the city is on a path to make similar irreparable damage to the canopy. People will look back in decades to come and think, how on earth could they vote to cut down perfectly healthy, mature and beautiful verge trees for such poor reasons? And this is not about one tree. It's about a pattern that is clearly forming. Council votes to destroy verge trees nearly every month. I ask that you all think hard about how you'd like to be remembered and what legacy you'd like to leave behind for the future residents and future generations of the city of Bayswater. In their recommendation, the officers have not minced their words. Their recommendation is clear and unequivocal. No reason has been given at all to remove the tree. Please listen to the experts and do the right thing. Thanks.
Thank you for your deputation. I'll just ask councillors if they have any questions. Councillor Peterson-Puke.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. James, for coming here tonight and providing your concerns. Just a general issue, because I think your concerns are quite clear. You probably read the report written by the officers, and it quotes that the removal of the tree is against the urban trees policy and the city's strategies. So, as someone who is against the removal of the tree, what else do you think we can do as a city to protect our verge trees when we have those kind of requests, when we already have a policy and a strategy, in light of your concerns?
Stick to the policy would be my initial reaction. Any solution is better than cutting down the tree. You know, we've heard lots of things from some councillors about how pruning is the issue. We've been too inflexible with our pruning. Okay, so let's be more flexible with our pruning. Like this is not a binary decision. We don't have to retain or cut down the tree. There are middle grounds that we can work towards, and it's just laziness, to be frank, that we're just jumping to the cut down option.
Thank you.
Councillor Osazowski.
Thank you. Just in regards to a comment you made about council's decisions to remove trees over the last few months, can you just expand on that a little bit more for me, please?
Yeah, well, if you look back over the minutes from the previous council meetings, you'll see that I think nearly every month over the last few months, trees have been cut down. Like verge trees this council has voted to cut down verge trees. And they're not the same issue as this, don't get me wrong, they're for different reasons, but yeah. It's still happening.
So it's interesting that you mentioned that comment, because I actually went and did some research over the last 6 months since October at the items that have been where we've talked about removing trees.
Yeah. And
there were actually 6 items that have come up to council. And of those 6, 5 of them, the officer's recommendation was to actually remove the tree. And councillors voted in favour of removing those trees. So when you're saying council is removing trees, are you speaking about councils voting against officers' recommendations or voting with officers' recommendations?
I think the issue there is that the ones where and I don't have the papers in front of me, so I can't check. The ones where they've recommended removing the trees, I think, are usually for development purposes, right? So that someone wants to subdivide their block, or they want to do so, they've got to put a driveway in or something. I can begin to understand that. What I can't understand is someone wanting to cut down a tree because they want to put lawn there. So they're different, they're chalk and cheese.
Any other questions, councillors? I have a few questions. So thank you for your deputation, Mr McGrath. Can I just confirm, do you live on Mercury Place?
I live in Central Ward.
So do you live on Mercury Place?
I don't really want to give you my address.
Okay. Do you live in the suburb of Morley?
I live in Embleton.
live in Embleton. Thank
Do
you.
are you suggesting that proximity is relevant to this?
I'm asking questions at the moment.
Okay, all right.
Can I ask how many times you've been to Mercury Place?
Been there once,
Was that recently?
yes?
Do you know someone who lives on Mercury Place?
No?
Did you walk along Mercury Place?
This is bizarre, but no, I drove down the street.
You drove down the street. Okay. Have you spoken to any of the residents on Mercury Place?
I'm a City of Bayswater ratepayer. I'm allowed to have an opinion about a publicly owned asset.
That's not my question. My question was, I'm trying to understand if you've had a conversation with
No,
the residents
no.
to see their views.
No, it's not my job
Because
to
this
do that.
came from a petition. So I was just wondering if
No,
you've spoken to
I
any
haven't
of the
because
residents.
it's not my job.
That's fine. Are you aware that the entire Mercury Place community signed a petition in support of removing the tree?
Yes, I understand that 26 people out of 69,000 people living in the City of Bayswater signed that petition.
So the people who live on that street. So could I ask, and I just want to clarify this for myself, you don't live on the street, you don't live on the same suburb, so could you please tell me why your view on this one street tree is more important, that this street tree that doesn't impact your daily life is more important than the views of the people who are impacted every day by this street tree?
I've never said my view is more important than theirs.
But you're asking us to consider it instead of their view.
No, I'm asking you to consider my view because I'm a City of Bayswater resident.
So can I ask, have verge trees ever been removed from your City of Bayswater property?
This is really weird. Are you talking about my own house?
Have verge trees been removed from your City of Bayswater property?
My house?
Your
Is that what-
residence?
I've only lived there since 2013. The property was built in 1970, so I can't answer that question.
So just to clarify, since 2013, there have been no verge trees removed from your property?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Earhart?
Yeah, so can I just clarify on that last question? Sorry, Madam Mayor, because there is a written deputation from somebody who I believe lives at the same address who says that 2 verge trees were removed from there in the last 2 years.
Oh, we've planted trees that haven't taken and then we pulled them out and planted other ones. I haven't read my partner's deputation, so I don't know what it says.
Thank you.
Thank you for your deputation.
Thank you.
The next deputy is in relation...
Madam Mayor, sorry to come in so late. Just to say that I have an impartial interest that I know of Mr McGrath and Rhiannon. That's impartial, and I thank them for their deputation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So the next deputy is Miss Eileen O'Rourke, speaking on item 10.3.1.
Okay, so I'm Aileen O'Rourke and I am from 66 King William Street, Bayswater. So not in Morley, not in Mercury Street, but King William Street, Bayswater. Okay, and I just would like to say good evening and thank you for allowing me to talk. I'm a bit nervous. So, yes, sorry, I'm a bit nervous, so if I can read this. So I will be brief, as I'm assuming councillors don't need to be lectured on the value of trees in our urban spaces for both human and wildlife well-being. And I guess I would hope that people are aware of the urban forest strategy in this. Okay. So thank you for the opportunity to speak about this important issue. As you can see from my residential address, so I've already addressed some of your questions, I'm not from the ward affected by that, but I'm on a street that is almost bare of street trees. I'm hoping that that will be rectified, so you might see me more as I try and rectify that situation. And I'm strangely optimistic, so I'll probably proceed with this. And I have strong feelings because I have no street trees. I have strong feelings about the issue of canopy cover and the desperate need of trees in the community. And I think maybe the councillors are aware of the community concern about the street trees, so I guess I'm not the only person that feels this. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the City Councillors, staff and key residents for the development of the urban forest strategy and the aims of protecting and retaining existing trees and the aspirations to increase the tree canopy coverage by 20% to 20% by 2025. I note that this strategy includes the street trees, using street trees to achieve this. I'd also like to acknowledge the reports by the council staff included in the agenda for the March and the February council meetings. They were thoroughly researched and written in a way that was accessible even to the very poor scientists like myself, so I'd like to thank them for that. It was therefore very disappointing when the majority of councillors last month voted against the recommendations made by the professionals, a recommendation which clearly is in line with both the policy and the greening strategies of the council. Setting a precedent of removal of a tree instead of providing the residents with clear information about the urban tree policy and perhaps some community support to be able to maintain that tree and to do the work that's necessary for them to maintain it, is very concerning for me and for many people. Given that the petition for number 17 that has been tabled is asking for the removal of a younger tree of the same species, I'm concerned that the same decision will be made. And this entrenches a precedent which I think is worrying. I urge the councillors to respect the report of the officers. They do seem to know their stuff. I urge you, in this instance that we're talking about now, number 17, to respect the urban forest strategy and the urban tree policy. As a community, we have little time to waste if we are to meet the tree canopy for 2025. I believe the council needs to act for the community as a whole, which might sometimes be at the expense of an individual's desires. It might sound trite, but here goes. Every tree counts, including the peppermint in Mercury Place.
Thank you for your deputation. I'll just ask if there are any questions. I have a question. Just, I noticed you spoke about community support for maintaining the tree. Could you please expand what that means?
I guess I am referring to, and we'll see, because we're getting a petition to support maintaining that tree. So we'll see how the support goes, which will be presented next week. I guess I'm talking about the community support on Facebook and just the conversations I've had.
Okay.
And not in Mercury Place, I will add.
Sorry. Okay. So when I heard community support for maintaining, I thought maintaining meant actually working on the tree. I didn't realise it just meant keeping the tree.
I see. I thought we're talking at cross purposes. I mean that. Can I ask you a question?
Not really. But
I'm assuming that perhaps the people at number 11 were older residents.
I don't know their age.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
Can you approximate or not? Yeah. Okay.
No. I think she was referring to number 11, not number 17.
11. Okay. I know that there's a lot of support, and if I can't identify their age, for people of my age, for example, to get help with gardening. I would also think, and Brendan and I were talking about this outside, that if the council said to the community, this tree can only be kept if there is support by community members to assist this family, I would think you would get an awful lot of support to do that. I mean, people are very passionate about this. People who are passionate about trees will do anything to help maintain trees. And so if you said that, I'm 70, but I'm pretty active, I would go and help that family.
Thank you. That's very kind. Could I ask then your views on pruning?
In what sense?
Should should people be allowed to ask for their trees to be pruned?
I guess so. I'm not an arborist. I think that's again something that you would want to ask the experts, not me.
Thank you very much. No other questions, councillors? No, thank you for your deputation. I'll now move on. So on the same item, we received a written deputation from Ms. Branka Radanovic, who is here this evening. Would you like to read it out? It's up to you.
I was hoping not to do this, but I'll give it a go.
It's entirely up to you. We have received the written deputation. I'll ask councillors, can you confirm that you have read it? Have all councillors read the written deputation?
I'll read it, it's
Okay.
fine. Branka Radanovic, 11 Slade Street, Bayswater. It was disheartening to see councillors pass the felling of the 30-year-old WA native tree, Agonis flexuosa, at 11 Mercury Place, Morley, at the last Ordinary Council meeting. I'm aghast. Now there is a further request for the last tree standing in this street. I am aghast. I am against the felling of this tree. It would appear from the Google photos for both trees in Mercury Place that the city has neglected to maintain the trees. I'll use management if that makes that more clear for you, Mayor. There has been a change in policy as at 2016 to cease pruning trees not under power lines, unless pruning is necessary for 1, traffic clearance, pedestrian signage and vehicles, 2, maintenance of sightlines, and 3, tree health and safety. This was passed at Council, the Ordinary Council meeting after AGM 2015, and it was a 2016 February item. Had the trees been maintained, best practice, I wonder if we would be addressing the requests from the 2 unhappy residents. I feel that an option should have been pursued for 11 Mercury Place. Remove the surface roots, add topsoil in preparation for lawn planting, under pruning for head clearance, and possible overhang on private property if the resident requests, rather than go for what should have been a last resort, that is to fell the tree. The tree at 17 Mercury Place needs to be maintained by the city as per the guidelines above for trees not under power lines. The city should thank the resident at 17 Mercury Place for maintaining the tree in such good condition. Finally, I include a fitting excerpt from the Urban Forest Strategy 5.5, Strategic Objective 5, inform and consult with the community. The City of Bayswater aspires to provide leadership and be a strong advocate for the urban forest, bringing the wider community along for the journey to explore all options and expanding on our urban forest to improve livability and ensure our survival in a changing climate is essential. That's the end of my deputation.
Thank you for your deputation. I'll ask if there are any questions, councillors. No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next deputation we received in writing in relation to item 10.3.1 from Miss Rhiannon Italiano. I'm aware that councillors have been provided with that deputation and I'll take that as read. The next, so moving forward, we have received a number of deputations in relation to item 11.1, and Miss Michelle Slater will be speaking on that. If you could come forward.
I got CC'd on a number of those deputations. Really lovely to read. So thank you, Mayor and councillors, for allowing this deputation. I'd also like to acknowledge the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nations on whose land we meet tonight. My name is Michelle Slater and I'm the chair of the Bayswater Women's Hub. I'm really pleased to be here tonight to represent our organisation's desire for a 5-year lease. Oh, thank you. For a 5-year lease at Shern Park. I would like to thank Councillor Peterson-Pick for putting forth this motion. I would also like to thank all of the councillors who attended our open day to learn more about our work. It was a real thrill for our volunteers to host you. This is it's a PowerPoint, okay. Here we go. So the Bayswater Women's Hub is a grassroots non-profit established by locals and for locals. Our mission is to provide access to tools and workshop facilities in a community space and to facilitate the exchange of knowledge between cultures, generations and capabilities. Our vision is to empower the women of Bayswater and beyond. We aim to achieve this via our 2 initiatives, a community tool library and a women's workshop. So you have the Bayswater Women's Hub umbrella organisation and then 2 initiatives underneath that, the Women's Workshop and the Tool Library. I wanted to take the opportunity to thank the City again for awarding us the Better Bayswater grant last year, which was used to run a pilot tool skills program for women in partnership with Arana House. I thank Arana House for their kind letter of support that was sent through earlier for this deputation, of which councillors will all have a copy. Denise Pepper will speak a little more later on her observations of the results of that program. Our vision for this location at Shern Park is to run programs and sessions for community members on a range of topics and to expand the work that we achieved in our pilot into the wider community. The vision for this site is also to run the tool library from this location. We have committee teams for both the workshop and the tool library, made up of a diverse mix of residents who are volunteers and are dedicated to delivering these programs to the citizens of Bayswater. There exists absolutely nothing like it in the city of Bayswater, and we hear over and over from residents that this is something that they have wanted for years. It's a genuine gap in services. We were completely overwhelmed by the amount of letters in support that we've received in support of this motion. It really warms our heart to see that the community really gets what we're trying to do and sees how amazing these initiatives are going to be. So, some familiar faces up there. As council is aware, there have been a number of formal and informal attempts to get the hub into permanent digs. Then Mayor Dan Bull organised a meeting last year with key council staff, and at that meeting was John Vines, who kindly showed us the facilities at Shern and has been so helpful, along with other city staff, in getting us to this point. When we originally opened up that bunker, it was like walking into a scene from Indiana Jones. There were like cobwebs and creatures scuttled off into the distance. But I saw it with love heart-shaped eyes because it was the perfect size for our storage requirements and shipping container sized. And when we saw the change rooms later, which were no longer in regular use, we could see behind that faded graffiti to see what it is going to become and what an amazing facility this is going to be for our community. So a 5-year lease will allow us to work with the city over the long term so that we can invest ourselves as an organisation in making that site fit for purpose for the hub and for our activities. So many people wanted their voices to be heard tonight in support of this motion. I'm privileged to be the one to represent them. And we didn't want to bore you all night. So we thought I would represent that, and Denise is going to talk a little bit about the programs and the outcomes. But I hope that each of you will take the time to read those emails and letters of support, see the absolute passion that the community has for this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll just ask if there are any questions from councillors. Councillor Peterson-Pick.
Thank you, Michelle, for explaining the background. I would like to ask you, because I think it's important for councillors to hear it from you. You already have access to that premises,
Yes,
but the proposal is for lease.
yes.
So why do you guys seek a lease? And what things you will not do or you will do if you don't get a lease?
Yes.
So why do you need a lease?
There are a number of reasons we need a lease. First and foremost is because we're offering annual membership, and in good faith we can't genuinely offer that membership when we're on a day, basically hiring it on a day-to-day basis, and it expires at the end of this year. So we genuinely can't offer memberships on that basis that are on an annual basis. The second thing is that while we're activating the space and we're moving into it, there are a number of things that we need to do to make it fit for purpose, and we just can't do that. We can't remove change room seats from the location when we don't have permanent tenure. So there's a number of things that we need to do to make that space right for what we need, and we just can't do it on the current basis, the tenure.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. I'll just clarify, I've received a lot of deputations in relation to this item.
I apologise, we put a call out and it was overwhelming.
That's okay.
I mean, in a good way.
They're all written deputations, but I can see Miss Pepper's here, and you said that she wanted to speak, whereas I've got a written deputation. So just clarify, once I get to you on the list, you're actually coming forward. Yep. So before you, we received written deputations from Miss Samantha Tang. Not here? No.
Most of these people...
Colleen Harris. So I'll just go through the written deputations, and if anyone's here and wishes to speak to it, just let me know, please.
Shall I take a seat?
Pardon?
Do you want me to take a seat then?
Yes, please. So we've received written deputations on this same item from Miss Colleen Harris, Miss Samantha Tang, Miss Denise Pepper, Miss Renee Kabasi, Miss Sarah Hull, Miss Brigitte Algeri, Miss Jane McDonald, Miss Sarah Oldfield, Miss Ruth Chang, Rani Stewart, Melissa Johnston, Miss Marie Setzinger, Miss Jacinta Ebsworth, Miss Heather Warden, Miss Samantha Sorgiovanni, Miss Justine Ciavellis, Miss Fiona Walkley, Miss Jade Winterton, Miss Siobhan McCarthy, Mr. Wayne Devereaux, Miss Tiana Saralia, Miss Jennifer Rendell-Smith, Miss Christina Arajo, Miss Samantha Aiken, Miss Regina Collier, Miss Nicola Menda Criado, Miss Bernadette O'Connell, Miss Fiona Marston, Miss Lorraine Hull. I think that's all of them. So I'll ask Miss Pepper if you'd like to come forward.
Good evening, and thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm Mrs. Denise Pepper. I'm a married woman with 2 children and 4 grandchildren. I think that needs to be put into some kind of perspective. I don't have a written speech. I'm going to speak from the heart. How this developed was, it was a conversation on Facebook, and I said, why isn't there a women's workshop? Michelle grabbed hold of that comment and ran with it and has developed to where it is now. I kind of phased off into the background. The reason for me to standing here talking this evening is I want to share a bit of my personal story. I found myself in an unusual but also a very awkward situation at the age of 24, being a single mother with 2 children. I had so many things to learn, let alone how do I look after my house. So I realised I needed to do something about this. So I went and studied a home handy person course and learnt how to use tools. And look, I didn't realise at the time that the minute I picked up that drill, something actually evoked and woke inside of me. It wasn't until later on that I realised what that was. So that gave me the confidence to, which you probably don't know, but change the fuse wire, fix that broken chair, have a bit of confidence in the house, and also be in a situation where I don't have to have a handyman come in and fix things. I can be independent. So anyway, from there on, I found things changed. I actually Never finished high school, so reading and writing was always a difficult thing for me. So I also then went off and studied building construction because of that workshop. In that building construction, I worked in the building trade for a number of years. I purchased my own home. I did my extensions on my own home. I got lots of editorials about this woman who has done this extension herself. So from there, I ended up going to university, not knowing that I'd ever get into university because I never finished high school. So I got in on a portfolio exemption. So from there, I ended up working at this university, and I'm still there, working and teaching how to use tools, how to create art, and now I have a career that from that day of picking up that tool and learning to use that tool, my life has changed. If I had never had that workshop, I wouldn't be standing here today. It's really important for me now, as a 62-year-old woman, to do that full circle. I now want to teach women who are in a domestic violence, relocating, restarting over. I want those women to have that empowerment. I want them to feel confident. I want them to feel that they're in their own home. They don't have to call a handyman. They can do it themselves. They can change the washer. This is empowerment for women. This is why this Women's Hub is so important, and this is something that I'm really passionate about. I very rarely get involved in community issues. This is the one that I've got a driving force for. Why do we need a space? Because we don't want to be part of the men's shed. We want these women to be able to come here, whether it's culturally or whether it's for some other reason that may have happened in their past, but be in a safe environment where they are with women, taught by women, not taught by men. I love men, don't get me wrong. And I'm married and I love my husband, but there's a line when we need to think where women need protecting and looking after, and this is what we're trying to do. So for us to obtain a space where we can go into this space, renovate it, make it feel comfortable, make it feel like a safe space. So that's my reason for standing here this evening.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your deputation. I'll just ask if there are any questions from councillors. No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've gone through all the written deputations. So we now move on to item 11.5. We have Miss Julia Maria Lake, and she has also submitted a written application. So, councillors, I'm aware that's being distributed this afternoon as well. So, thank you very much for attending. We'll now be asking questions of the officers. We'll go through the items that were subject of deputations first. So, councillors, are there any questions on item 10.3.1 for officers? And if you've got an interest, could you please disclose it at the beginning? No disclosures. Any questions on this item? Councillor Johnson.
Since we've heard that the reason the residents wanted this tree removed was because they weren't able to prune it themselves, I'm wondering if we could have an option for next week, that be one of the options available to us.
I'll go to the director.
Is there?
Through the chair, can I just clarify that's an option to allow them to prune the tree? Is that what we're asking here?
Councillor Johnson, is that correct?
Yes.
That's the question.
Well, if councillors wish us to prepare something like that, we can provide something to that effect.
Thank you.
Councillor Ostaszewski.
In the interest of fairness to the whole community, would that be something that would be available for everyone, not just the residents at 17 Mercury Place?
Is that question directed to me? Oh.
I'm happy to answer it because if it will assist to retain this particular tree. If we think that's something more broadly, that's a different discussion.
Any other questions on this item? No. Councillor Peterson-Pick.
Yes, thank you. So we heard tonight some concerns about children safety. So is the city aware of that? Has this been raised with the city? Do we know any incidents when it comes to children along the street running and stumbling on the roads? I'm assuming this is the concerns. They said something kids can fall into the, into the tree. I didn't understand that, but are we aware? Have we received complaints or incidents?
I'll go to the director.
Thank you.
Yeah, through the chair, we're not aware of any particular incidences, well, particularly with that tree. So we're not aware of any incidences. I'd probably say it's plausible. There could be, someone could trip over a root or something like that, but we haven't heard of any particular incidents in that particular case.
Any other questions on this item? No? We'll then move on to item 11.1, Bayswater Women's Hub's leasing facilities. Any questions on this item? Councillors? No? We'll move on to item 11.5, Swing for People with a Disability, Barden Park. Any questions? No? Okay. So I now go on to items that I've been advised. 10.4.1, Councillor Johnson, you had a question?
Yeah, thank you. I just want to get some clarification on this one. It's about the proposed noxious industry at 24 Embleton Avenue, Embleton. So it's not clear to me, what they're proposing, how is that different to what they're currently doing?
I'll go to the director. (10.4.1).
Through you, Madam Chair, the uses came to the attention of the city via a development compliance matter, which has been resolved. They have since, as part of that development compliance investigation, it was revealed the amount of works which were being carried out on the site, which put it into a noxious industry category. So they have since put forward the application to seek all the necessary approvals.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. So it's a retrospective approval, or is it additional to what they're currently doing? That's what's not clear to me.
The uses have been undertaken from the site for quite some time, so it's formalising the activities which are carried on there. The front part of the site is used to sell automotive vehicles, and so the rear is for wrecking, and they also break up materials as well.
Thank you.
Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. With regard to the application and the officer's recommendation, will the trees be planted on Beachborough South Road as well as on Embleton Avenue?
I'll go to the director.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. Condition 24 relates to 3 street trees on the Embleton Avenue verge and 3 small street trees on the Beachborough Road South verge.
Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? No. We'll now move on to item 10.4.3, which is investigation outcomes and process relating to mobile food vehicles. Before I go to Councillor Johnson, I'll just ask if anyone has an interest to declare. No? Councillor Johnson?
Thank you. Sorry, just a moment. I'll just get my email that had some questions on it. Sorry. I guess I had some experience with running a mobile food van and some ideas of some of the issues that mobile food vendors have and the opportunities a review of this would present to us. So I'm just wondering if this is something for the for the city. I'm just wondering if in this process we'd be picking up requirements for mobile food vendors to provide reusable or compostable packaging. If we were going to look at inconsistencies between the permits for stalls versus vans, if we were going to look at things like the online application process. I'm not sure if that's in the report, my apologies.
I'll go to the director.
The review could take into account any number of those aspects. It is intended that it would become a permit or approval arrangement administered by Environmental Health, and as you know, they have different programs relating to, you know, food safety and that sort of thing. We could look into that and see whether it is appropriate. So the other part of your question.
Thank you. There's inconsistencies, in my view, between stalls, if you don't have a van, and like a barbecue with a tent on it, and an actual mobile food van. I understand that some are administered through the rangers and some through maybe planning or environment health. So I'm just wondering if there could be potential for those to be simplified.
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, we are looking at how the overall process and permit issuing system can be simplified so that you don't have a number of different permits for similar activities. Thank you.
Councillor Palmer?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On the same item, with regard to the guidelines, I believe there isn't any yet, and I'm hoping that they will come back to council for confirmation.
I'll just get confirmation from the director.
Thank you. Sorry, could you repeat the guidelines that are proposed? Yes. There aren't any guidelines at the moment. Are they coming back to council for ratification?
Madam Mayor, yes, the outcomes of the investigation, along with the guidelines and the recommendations for how we issue permits or move forward with mobile food vehicles, will come back to council.
To council, good. Yep. Thank you.
Any other questions on this item? No? Okay. I'll move on to item 10.6.1.1, Councillor Complaints Policy. Councillor Peterson-Pick has asked has a question on this, but I'll just check any interest to disclose from anyone. No? Councillor Peterson-Pick?
Yes. Yes, two questions, please. The first one, the report on page 303 at the bottom, the last sentence, mentions the register will not contain details of the complainant, but I haven't seen that in the policy itself. So I just wanted to know if this is the case or not. So I couldn't see that reference in the policy, just in the report.
Yeah. I'll go to the CEO.
Through the chair, I might just see if I can get Cass to respond to that, if possible.
Through the chair, the intent of the policy was to guide the process in terms of making a complaint and how that would be investigated. So that's not included in the details of the policy because that's more operational, but we could definitely put that as an amendment to make sure that it is clear that it won't have details in there, but that wasn't the focus of the policy.
I actually have concerns about that, but so this is why I wanted to know if it's there or not. But if it's not there, so does it mean that the complainant's details will be shared? If it's currently not there, so they are going to be shared?
Through the chair, no, what we would do is we put a register together and it wouldn't have that in the register, so we wouldn't have any columns or anything to put those details in there. So it wouldn't be part of the register.
Okay, so I'm just finding in the policy the right section, which talks about the register. Okay, I can look at it later. My second issue was in the policy. Yeah, page 310 in our agenda. If you look at section or clause 30 and clause 32, I think they're the same. Am I right?
Through the chair, that's correct. We will amend that.
Okay. Okay. So can I please just, I don't think we need to make an amendment in the council meeting. Yeah, can we prepare just to move one of them? And at the same time, I'll just ask if you can also ensure at the same amendment that the complainant details will be as part of the register, and we can debate it. Thank you.
Councillor Ball.
Thank you. Just some questions on the policy. So if we go to page 307 of the agenda that councillors have received, it's actually page 2 of the policy itself. Under the heading Process for Making a Complaint, item 3 says the complainant must lodge the complaint with the city's complaint officer. Third-party complaints cannot be accepted. I'm just interested to know what a third-party complaint is.
I'll go to the CEO.
Through the chair, I would say I would assume, well, I say it's to do with someone doing a complaint on behalf of someone else.
So you assume it is, or is it?
That's the way it's worded, yes. It is someone else making a complaint on behalf of someone else.
Thank you. Next page, page 3 of the policy, under the heading Mediation. Just got a couple of questions on this provision. Firstly, in Rule 10 or Clause 10, I don't know what term you use, the investigator must offer mediation to both parties. So that isn't a defined term. So who are both parties?
I'll go to the CEO.
Through the chair, I might just get Cass to clarify.
Through the chair, so in this instance, both parties would be the complainant and then the councillor who the complaint has been made about.
Okay, thank you. Mediation, my understanding is that, well, I would see mediation as something that's utilised when there is some kind of dispute between parties, as opposed to where there is a complaint. So can I please get some more understanding of what the process of mediation is and why it would be used in relation to what I would have thought is a question that needs to be determined objectively based on the evidence that is provided?
I'll go to the CEO.
Through the chair, I'll take that on notice if I can.
Okay. Then my question is, who decided that mediation should form part of this process? How has that come about? So obviously, a decision has been made internally.
I'll go to the CEO.
Through the chair, I'll take that on notice and provide that detail.
Right. Okay. Thank you. So further down the page, we've got provision 19 and provision 20. Provision 19 says that if the investigator concludes that the behaviour, the subject of the complaint, is an offence under the local law that deals with meeting procedures, the complaint should be referred back to the complaints officer. So my first question is, what happens next? Because I couldn't see anything that says what happens after a complaint is referred back to the complaints officer. Why is that needed?
I'll go to the CEO.
Take that on notice, cool. And then my question is, how does provision 19 and 20 work together? Where 19 says that once the investigator has concluded the subject of the complaint is an offence, it goes back to the complaints officer, but then provision 20 says that there's different steps that need to be followed. So how did 19 and 20 work together?
I'll go to the CEO.
The chair, I'll acknowledge there's that. It could be I can understand what you're saying in terms of clause, through the chair, in terms of clause 19 saying it's concluded and then it says it's still to be concluded. So we'll clarify that.
Thank you.
And maybe tighten the wording to make that more clear.
Thank you for that. That'd be good. So, provision 21 says the investigator's deliberations and determination are to be confidential and reported only to the complaints officer. So, how is that information, given that it's confidential and it can only be conveyed to the complaints officer, how is a complainant or a counsellor able to find out what has been determined by the investigator?
Go to the acting CEO.
Thank you, the chair. I'm not sure whether Cass can help. If not, we'll take that on notice.
Sure. Thank you. And my other question on that question of confidentiality, so provision 23 says confidentiality of the investigations and matters discussed is to be maintained at all times. So who is bound by that provision and how? Where is the head of power that would ensure that confidentiality is maintained, particularly with someone who may not fall under this policy because they're not a counsellor? Take that one on notice. Beauty. So provision 24, the term action plan is used. I presume all the way through action plan, which is a defined term, should be capitalised, capital A, capital P. Is that correct?
So I missed that.
So provision 24 is the first time that the defined term, which is defined above, is used, and then action plan is used throughout. It is a defined term, but it is not capitalised. I'm just wondering if actually that should be capitalised, given it's a defined term.
Through the chair, that's correct.
Cool, thank you. And in 24 as well, it all of a sudden uses a new term called the member. I presume this is like the counsellor or something. Just wondering if we need to get some consistency in the language.
Through the chair, it's meant to be the counsellor, but we can clarify that.
Thank you. Provision 25B uses the term counselling with a capital C, but I couldn't find a definition for that. Just wondering whether that was intended to actually be capitalised or whether there is a missing definition.
The chair will clarify that too. Thanks.
Thank you. Provision 26D says an agreed time frame for the actions to be completed. An agreed time, who agrees the time frame? Yep, clarify that one. Beauty. Thank you. 27B uses a defined term report, but that's not defined. Just wondering whether there was a misdefinition.
Through the chair, likewise.
Thank you. And thank you. And the last word in that provision, parties. Who are the parties? I presume that's the, I don't know actually. Who are the parties?
Through the chair, as I think Cass mentioned, that would be the two, the complainant and complaint.
Cool. Thank you. Just following on from Councillor Peterson-Pick's comment, 30, that's right, 30 and 32 appear to be duplicated, but I'm just wondering whether the provisions 29, 2 to 32 need to be looked at, because it looks like there's kind of some duplication across all of them. Is that something that is able to be looked at across all of 29 to 32?
Through the chair, definitely will review that and see, make sure it reads clearly and flows clearly.
Thank you. In provision 33, it says council must give reasons for the finding. I'm assuming that is a decision of council. I'm wondering whether that is something that needs fleshing out a little bit, or a defined term or something. I don't know. Maybe.
Through the chair, we'll have another look at that.
Thank you. Provision 35, confidentiality of complaints. So my question is, how is this provision enforceable, and is it a double up with enforceable provisions further up that I've mentioned?
The chair will take that on notice again, please.
Yeah, thank you. provision 37 says the withdrawal of a complaint must be in writing and must be given to the complaints officer. Does it also need to state that the complaint is being withdrawn?
Through the chair, that's implied, but sorry, through the chair, that's implied, but we can clarify that. Yeah.
Beauty. Thank you. Provision 39 starts using a new term, model code. I couldn't find that defined anywhere, and also rules of conduct. Just wondering if that needed to be looked at. Yep, thank you. And I also wondered whether the reference in provision 39, reference to clause 26, if that also needs to refer to clause 25. I'll let you take that on notice. Thanks. Provision 44 talks about the quotation being agreed upon in writing. I was just wondering who needs to agree that?
Through the chair, yeah, we can clarify that.
Thank you. Provision 45 uses a new term for the first time, capital C, city. Just wondering whether, for example, earlier local government was used, which I think is defined as being the definition under the Act. Just wondering whether there's some consistency.
Yeah, through the chair, we'll review all those terms used and make sure there is consistency.
Beauty, thank you. Provision 46 talks about the city's record management system. Just wondering if that needs to be defined or if couldn't find that.
The chair will again look at that.
Thank you. And in 47, it uses the term annual report. I presume that's the city's annual report, but just wondered whether that needed to be clarified as well.
The chair again, we'll look at that.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you. Any other questions on this item, councillors? Councillor Palmer?
Thank you. After listening to that, I'm not very comfortable, but has this been looked at by our lawyers?
I'll go to the CEO.
Through the chair, my understanding it hasn't.
It hasn't. Do you think it should?
Through the chair, we'll have a look through the requested changes and the
Thank you.
questions asked, and we'll take it from there.
Any other questions, councillors? No? Okay, the next one is item 11.7, which is Councillor Eason's notice of motion, customer focus enabled by technology. Just check, does anyone have any interest to declare on this one? If not, I'll go to Councillor Peterson-Pick for the question.
Yes, thank you. Just a few questions to the city. So I read the report and it mentions that quite a lot of the things in the motion are already being progressed or being planned. So are we able to receive better understanding what is new in the motion so we know what we are voting on, what is new?
I'll go to the director.
Thank you.
Through the chair, so this notice of motion is requesting that we consider during the review of our ERP and our scoping of our ERP that we focus particularly on the customer service across the organisation, across the city, and our delivery of that. So whilst we have been working on it, we've worked on our digital strategy, we're working on our ERP scoping at the moment. So this is just asking particularly to take focus of customer service and how we address that in terms of delivery of the service and through our technology. It is implicit in what we're doing, but I guess this is just further strengthening that and just a specific request for us to consider it.
Okay, so that wasn't planned. As part of the work on the ERP, that wasn't planned. The customer service review and all that stuff, you're saying it wasn't planned. The city was not planning on doing that. So
through the chair, I guess a way to explain it, in terms of scoping out our ERP, we certainly will take into account customer in the whole project we're calling customer first. So it certainly will take into account. This is just asking us to particularly focus on the delivery of customer service, and it will also bring into review how our customer service charter, our customer service framework, and how we deal with customer service matters across the entire city. So I guess it's just broadening it is probably the answer.
Okay, thank you for that. So on page 374, it talks about the financial implications, and it mentions $20,000. Are you able to clarify the $20,000, so exactly what this one refers to?
So through the chair, we have engaged a a contractor to assist us with our ERP review and scoping, given the magnitude of the project. As you know, we're planning to include some funds in the capital budget for the upcoming couple of years. So they are funds that have been allocated to assist us in the preparation of the scoping documents and the project planning of the project, of the implementation of the project.
So you're saying that that budget that we already have will be able to cover what is being proposed here?
Piece of work, yes.
Okay, so it will not require additional funds? Thank you.
Any other questions on this item? Okay, that's all the items that have been, oh, sorry, Councillor, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, so I'll just go around. Which item is that?
11.1.
11.1. Yep.
No, sorry, 11.6.
11.6. Okay, yep.
Yeah, I just had a general question. There are a couple of others as well, but this one, because this is all in the notice of motion, this seems to be the only one that didn't have a financial implication associated with this. And I'm just seeking some better clarification around that, because reading limbs 1 through 6, that appears to me as quite a significant body of work and would take quite a considerable amount of officer time. So could I just get clarity around why we're not having consistency in financial implications, and if I could get what the actual implications are of this in terms of officer time?
I'll go to...
Yeah, but I don't believe that.
I'll go to the Director.
Through the Chair, in terms of the resources required to do this work, it will be in-house. Saying that, it still has a cost attached to it, not necessarily that it costs anything extra to the council, just means officer time does get spent on it, meaning they're not doing other activities while they're doing this work. We have had that discussion internally. What we're looking at is probably about up to 3 days of work for an officer to collate this information and put it together. We have got the information in different sources at the city, but it also requires some work to go and look at the different sources and actually go out and look at things as well. So we estimate about 3 days worth of work. That also involves not just the officer time, but management being involved as well. And we estimate the cost about around the $2,000 mark for that type of work.
Thank you. Can I just follow up with, because I know we have raised it in the past, sorry, and I know other councillors have raised it in the past, that with financial implications, I would like to see, and I'm sure other councillors would like to see, that even if it is just in staff time, that is recorded so we understand the implications as well. Thank you.
So, councillors, does anyone have any other questions on any of the items on the agenda? Councillor Peterson-Pick.
Yes, thank you. I did actually submit more questions. Some of you, maybe you haven't received them, but I did. More items. So one of them is 10.3.2.
Sorry, that's my mistake. I missed that.
Yeah, and there are more. There are a few more.
Okay.
Not a lot. Okay, so 10.3.2, the redevelopment of Bardon Park.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, thank you.
I'll just check. Does anyone have any interest to declare on this? No. Go
yes.
ahead.
So my question, the first question is, can you remind us what brought this item before us? What's prompted this? Is this part of the existing long-term financial plan? The redevelopment of the whole thing.
I'll go to the Director.
Through the Chair, at a previous council meeting, there was a request, or there was a report presented in terms of providing universal access between the two levels in the park, and basically what was decided at that meeting was to go out and seek expressions of interest to see whether we can do a more holistic approach to the design of the park rather than just the universal access. So that's how this report's come about. It's basically providing the outcome of that expression of interest.
Thank you. So I saw that it talks about in the report about $1.8 million, right, on page 127 in the middle. Is this the figure that we are talking about? the total sum of the whole project?
Through the chair, that is a figure it's a ballpark figure at this stage. Obviously, once the designs get done, we'll have a more accurate figure, but that is what we are initially estimating as the cost, a reasonable cost for that type of project. But it will depend on what the design is and what's included and what's not included in that project.
So as part of the $1.8 million that we are talking about, is this mainly for the access that we are talking about from the top to the bottom playgrounds, or is it also redevelopment of other facilities or infrastructure in the park?
Through the chair, it's for the entire park. So it's not just the universal access. That is included in the scope, but it's talking about doing other works as well within that park.
So is this the time to replace the playground in Bowden Park at the top and the bottom? Is this those playgrounds are we replacing the playgrounds?
Through the chair, at this stage we don't know. It's talking about improving the park, so providing the universal access and also doing some work on the ponds that are there. So there's a number of items that need work done on, but doesn't necessarily mean that everything needs to be replaced. That will be decided through the design process and the consultation process that goes with the project.
Thank you. So can we get, and I'm happy to take it on notice, a breakdown exactly what the $1.8 million include? Like what components of that project we are including? Like how much money is for the new access, how much money is for the ponds, how much money is for other things? Are we able to do that? Because I'm not sure exactly what it includes.
Through the chair, those figures, I mean, it's very high level figures at this stage. So what we're saying generally is that we need to make an allocation for the project, but we haven't gone to the extent of actually estimating every component in that park. We could provide an indication of what it could be broken down into. We can do that, but in terms of its relevance later on, I mean, we need to go through the design process to determine exactly what is going to be included in that park.
It will be good even a rough idea. So the motion that came from the officers talks about $1.1 million, right? And then later on there will be overall 1.8. So if we can just get a breakdown in overall, what components we are talking about, I think it's quite a lot of money. So it will be good for councillors to know what we're approving. Is how much is for the access, how much the ponds, what other aspects of the park we are doing. Yeah. And if we can get some information about each one of them, for example, the ponds, what are we fixing in the ponds? Are they due to be fixed? Each one of them, the access, I'm familiar with the issue, but I just want to know the other components mainly. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on this one? No? Sorry, Councillor Peterson-Pick, I don't have another one here listed for you.
I actually had a just general question about 10.6.1, which is all the reports from the Policy Review and Development Committee. I looked at the minutes from that committee and I saw another item, the Bayswater Grant Program Policy that the committee approved, but I couldn't see it listed in the agenda. So I just wanted to know, will that come to us in the future or why it's not here?
I'll go to the CEO.
Through the chair, I'll need to take that on notice and just check. Yeah,
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll ask councillors, are there any other questions on any of the other items? Councillor Johnson?
Thank you. I had this question I was actually going to ask next week, but it might be relevant for, the question on the Women's Hub. I forget the number, my apologies. So I've already asked questions on it, my apologies.
11.1.
Yeah, thank you, that one. Could I have an update on the progress of the lease for the Maylands Interpretive Centre?
I'll go to the director.
I'll have to take that on notice and provide that information separately.
Any Councillor Bull?
I completely forgot and it just hit me. It's going back actually to 10.3.1. But it also relates to 11.3 as well. There's comment in both of those reports that a procedural motion at the Policy Review and Development Committee held on the 22nd of February 2022 has referred the trees on private land and street verges policy and urban tree policy to a councillor workshop. So my question is, given that that committee doesn't have delegated authority, shouldn't a procedural motion or any motion be a recommendation to council that council needs to respond to?
I'll go to the acting CEO.
Thank you, through the chair. We can take that on notice and we'll respond to council.
Thank you. Thanks.
Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's to do with 11.1, and it's to do with the annexed shed further down the park at Shern Park, which is part of the proposed lease. And the fact that it needs a surveyor to check the roof. Now, I've been on the understanding that this is supposed to be done by the lessee, not the lessor. But I think that as it's our structure, the city structure, it should be done by the lessor, not the lessee. And that's, to me, very important. That's a surveyor's report on the annexed, it's like the cave, what do you call it? Dan, what do you call it? The area. I don't know what you call it, but it's the underground shed that has a bunker. Yeah, it's the bunker that has apparently a very poor roof. And that's part of the lease of the actual shed.
So is the question
and why are they
whether-
asking the tenant to say they should get the survey report? Because I think that's down to us. It's our building.
I'll go to the director.
Thank you.
If I can just take that one on notice, I mean, I'll have a discussion with the officers that have prepared the report and just see what the reasons are behind that.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Peterson-Pick.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out to Sally Palmer, you can look at paragraph 2, which talks about that. Paragraph 2.
Any other questions, councillors, on any of the items? If there's nothing else, I'll close the agenda briefing forum at 8:32 p.m. Thank you. No.